Welcome to the Deeks.ai podcast, where Wake Forest innovators unpack the real-world magic of artificial intelligence through candid conversations. I'm Michael Ferrari.
I'm Ryan Scholl.
Please join us as we explore how artificial intelligence is transforming work across campus, one fascinating story at a time.
What does it mean to be literate in an age of generative AI? Jerid Francom argues that the focus on commercial tools like ChatGPT is a distraction from the deeper needs for data and information literacy. We discuss the university as a safe haven to fail, the risks of corporate-led AI models, and why the cognitive struggle of learning remains the most valuable product a university can offer.
Welcome to a new season of Deeks.ai, still the #1 higher education artificial intelligence podcast at Wake Forest University. If you haven't watched or listened to our 2025 highlight episodes, you should go to Spotify, Apple, and even YouTube, where we recap our 2025 season with highlights and quotes from a lot of our guests. They are, by all accounts, pretty fascinating to me. Michael, what do you think?
I thought they were great, really fun conversations. Some of them that I can't believe happened almost a year ago at this point, which was kind of weird.
Oh, wow, that is true. I didn't even do the math on that. Also, for those of us who couldn't attend, or if you attended and want to learn more, check out our AI Fest website. We have recordings and some information about our 2-day conference that we had back in December, packed with great information from our colleagues. We have all kinds of presentations, we have panel discussions, we have industry experts. So find all that information on the AI Fest website that you can get off the IS website.
Yep.
And as always, keep sending us feedback at deeks.ai@wfu.edu. So with that,
Perfect.
I think maybe we should introduce our guests. What do you think? Sound good?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Well, with us today is Jerid Francom, an associate professor of Spanish. He sits at the intersection of human language and computational power. He is a leading expert in corpus linguistics and quantities text analysis. His work bridges the gap between traditional humanities and data science, focusing on how large-scale language archives from a variety of sources, including news, social media, and other internet sources, can reveal cultural and linguistic nuances through reproducible computational methods. His research tries to better understand the linguistic and cultural similarities and differences between language varieties for both scholarly and pedagogical projects. Michael, did you understand anything I just said?
I blacked out for that. Sorry.
I am very thankful we actually have a linguistics professor with us to translate whatever I just read. So, Jerid, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
You have described yourself as a techno-hobbyist, and you're a Spanish professor. Now, many eons ago, when I took Spanish in college, the very wonderful gentleman who taught me Spanish was elderly, did not use technology. I don't even think he was able to communicate with us through email. So can you explain to me how your background or your hobby with technology connects with Spanish? Or any language for that?
Yeah, for any language. Yeah, it doesn't sound like a very natural pairing. That is true. And in many ways, it probably isn't still today, and that's for, I think, the obvious reasons that it seems like strange bedfellows. But today is one thing, but the way it got started is probably the better, I guess, sort of introduction to what I'm doing today. Is that I was just got involved in a grad program in Spanish department and got into the linguistics, so Hispanic linguistics. And that introduced me to a whole new realm of looking at language from a science point of view. And so that was really captivating to me. But while in that program, and I started, as graduate students do, we end up, having summers that we need to make money and such. And so I started getting sort of more interested in seeing what I could do and dabble with creating websites. I kind of learned how to do one myself. This is like 2002. And so I was like, oh, cool. I can make a web page. And then I got out there and started saying, hey, what if I made a web page for our department? So I kind of pitched that idea. And so I started this series. I say that because I started with this series of little projects during the summer to kind of engage what I thought was fun, the building and working with the web and the internet. and it's a way to get sort of paid during the summer. And I just would always oversell what I could do. Like I knew it was possible, but I didn't know how to do it yet. And so I started learning,
Didn't you just ask AI?
I couldn't ask AI at that time.
Clearly, you were embedded in the technical world. You understood artificial intelligence, machine learning. Now, you've previously stated that you had a ChatGPT moment and it prompted you to send an email to your chair talking about how this is going to change or revolutionize education. As somebody who's embedded in that world, why did this surprise you so much?
On the one hand, because it was always sort of on the horizon, like everyone, and you just become.
And then the horizon just wasn't there.
The horizon just extended, and it just kept extending. And for those of us who study language in a lot of depth, we recognize things that you're just your average person who's just a language user doesn't think about or see in language. Language is a very complex system, and it's. Once you understand that, and a lot of people don't, and I guess I'm going to step back just a sec to come back to this point, is that a lot of people will jump in, less linguists are involved in computational linguists, or at least that has been and now is definitely the case for years and years. So you'd find more and more linguists dropping out of computational linguistics, and you'd find more and more computer scientists or people from lots of disciplines jumping into it, as language is just another kind of data, right? So you'd have people who are working on computer vision, you'd be working with computer, all sorts of things. And language is just one of these kinds of data sources, but underlyingly, the questions, the computational questions are often very similar. It's not to be surprised that we have vision models and all this stuff. And you think, well, how do language models and vision models? Because fundamentally underneath the hood, it's the way things are, at least the architectures now, they're very much the same. So you'd see less and less linguists even being involved in these enterprises. When I would go to conferences, at, artificial intelligence conferences or other conferences where there was lots of, NLP work being showcased, it was myself and my colleague and maybe one other people, and we were the only linguists. It was actually surprising to find out that we were linguists, because there really isn't a lot of linguists involved in that area. Again, still not. So anyway, why was I surprised? Well, the sense that it was always coming, that people jumping in were often naive about the complexity of language, and the methodologies seem to just not be converging on anything very useful or helpful. I mean, there was gains, there were interesting architectures, but there really wasn't a point, at least up until that release in 2020, was it 2021 November, what it was, 2022, where we all got to see what OpenAI was doing in a much more public way, that I realized that we are not just working with stuff that excites researchers. This is helpful. Like, this is something that someone will actually find useful. And that jump from being something that researchers were interested in and lots of papers being written about, to something where you could tangibly just pull up a web page and like just ask a question, and then you'd get a response that would just be like, what did that? And people might say, oh, there are errors, but man, it was a leap for me. Now, this obviously didn't happen overnight. This was in the brewing, but in terms of how long people have been talking about getting to this point, it was overnight. From my point of view, and again, my involvement with machine learning wasn't really about generating text. It was more about using machine learning for these other purposes I described before. So I can't say that I was like firsthand watching this happen, and then it just threw us all for a loop. But yeah, so if I kind of moved on to a side thread here or not, but yeah, it was definitely, I knew it was different.
So you've also said that it has the possibility to either be the best or worst learning tool.
Yeah.
And I assume that probably sparked your initial reaction. Why argue with yourself? Look at what is the best about it and what is the worst?
So the best aspects are the fact that if you're curious and you're interested and say you have idea A and idea B, but you don't know exactly where to interpolate between the two, like you have like a fog between the two, you might play a question like, like, hey, I'm looking into this sort of situation. Is it or is it not related to X or Y? The things that you have some fundamental understanding. And it was interesting to find how it find consistencies or just, and then you could follow up on it. And it was like, wow. Or it could just say, no, you're referring to this. And then you go, cool. It was just like interactive Wikipedia in a way, like with a much more conversational tone. Instead of sending me to a web page to go look for myself, it was already kind of giving me some things to think about. So I find that aspect still today, one of the more powerful sort of aspects of generative AI from a knowledge generation point of view, right? The fact that I can take knowledge I know and have some, and then get some inspiration. And in that sense, I find, just as those of us who lived through the Wikipedia scare days, where people would don't go to Wikipedia, it's terrible, it's written by a bunch of so and so's and whatnot. The beautiful thing about Wikipedia was that it was this crowdsourced, and crowdsourcing is an amazing phenomenon in itself. I mean, that's just it's an amazing thing how individuals, we're all flawed in certain ways, but when we put our minds together, we actually create something much better than any individual. It's just amazing. Crowdsourcing is another topic, but it's amazing. Crowdsourcing is crazy. So it ends up becoming very, very helpful and very reliable in a lot of ways. It's not the end, though. Clearly, no one cites Wikipedia and calls it a done day, but it is definitely a place to fill in gaps and create new questions. And I found that right off the bat that I could see that was going to be a huge help for anybody who had the spirit of curiosity. On the flip side, I could easily see how this could just be answer the question for me. And I don't need to think about why. I just need to produce answer. And so it all of a sudden took something that was conceptually never possible to just say, write something for me, and made it possible. And being in a world in which the tensions of real reality, where there's for education purposes, right? You have a paper due. I've been there. I was there. I mean, I had to write. I remember this philosophy paper I had to write, and I was like batting my head. I was walking around, and I remember trying to write it, walk out my front door, and walk down the street, and trying to get my ideas together. And if there was any way I could have got that done, like I could today, there's almost no doubt in my mind that I would have done it, because I just had to. I was clawing at a sheer face wall at that point. But I had to scrap some together, and I did, but you won't, that was because there was no other way, right? I think back to myself, I just had to, right? Yeah. And that was up until just, 5, whatever it's been now, right? We're talking about 4 years on. That's the way it was. You had to go through these things. There wasn't a question, and I didn't have to play philosopher with myself. What is it good for me? Or is it not good for me? It's hard to say. I mean, it's easy to say, I know learning is going to change me, and it's a good experience. But it's another thing to say, I can pull the ripcord at any point and not have to go through that.
I often am curious about the term learn, because I've been out of school for a long time. I am not learning something to master it. As our students come through, our favorite term is the cognitive struggle. They have to struggle to learn and master a subject, where I can learn, and I'm going to use my air quotes right now, I can learn anything I want in a matter of seconds or minutes. As a quick example, I can never remember the terms about electricity. I do a lot of DIY. I'm always playing with home electricity, and I was trying to figure out how many things I can plug into this power strip and if I can run it off a battery. And so I had one of these AI tools create a simulation for me, because I can never remember. So yes, did I learn that? Yes. Did I retain it? Maybe not. But in the moment, I learned something. So that term learn, I will struggle. I'm confused sometimes, because the learning that our students do is very different than me looking something up and trying to get some information retrieval very quickly to learn about electricity or Bernoulli's principle, or explain to my children why it's it's colder on the top of a mountain when it's closer to the sun. I don't need to remember that. I just need to get that in the moment. So that when you talk about the best and worst tools for learning, I can argue both sides of that equation in a matter of seconds.
Yeah. Well, I think you're talking about the end goal sort of in a way, right? Like, do I need to produce a widget to get something done that doesn't? I think it comes back if you think about the term learning. When I think about learning from an educator's point of view, I don't think I'm interested in knowing that you know the information. I think what information can do is important in that it helps you understand how to link and be sort of the base of being able to connect and create from that. But the knowledge itself somehow has changed. Like the importance of having the knowledge in one's head has changed from the raw information about knowing and then the knowing how to get to knowing. That's, I think, probably not it's probably talked about quite a bit. I just think that it's important to recognize. I know from my vantage point going in graduate school, and there was a hesitation and I think a skepticism in academics to the degree to which now students no longer had to come to a class and have the knowledge in their heads. And more we were able to know where we could find that knowledge, right? And so what became important in my generation of my graduate studies was where do you know to find things? How do you remember enough to know that there's something about that you can retain? So you need to retain that. But then do you need to know the names, the dates, the stuff, like the raw stuff? Previously, academics would do that. Like you could just sit down and they would be able to talk and pull out chunks of text and people probably still do this. This has just never been my strength, right? My strength, I usually remember semantic memory and the episodic and semantic, but I get the gist. And if I get the gist, then I can remember like what are the strategies to get to the information when I need it. That is a sort of it's still learning, right? It's just not the learning like I'm dumping it all into my head. I only now have sort of the reference points to where I find the details, but I have the gist in my head, right?
So I think you're about to really get into this next topic, and I want to set the stage.
Right.
We like to mark time with moments.
Mm-hmm.
We like to use analogies. We talk about this AI revolution and the ChatGPT moment, but an analogy is this ChatGPT moment is kind of like the COVID moment for universities.
Mm-hmm.
COVID forced us to take a look at our processes and really shift some of the learning and some of the modalities we used. And then right on the heels of that comes a lot of this generative AI stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So why is this a second COVID moment? Why are we taking such a hard look, and what is it forcing us to do in terms of the way that our professors are interacting with our students and what our mission is?
Yeah, I mean, the analogy to the COVID moment is one I like because I know that it's fresh in a lot of our minds. And I also think that the COVID, the transition that summer between the spring, and then moving into fall, and what is higher education going to do to keep things moving forward, was such, like, what do we do? And all of us that were finishing up the spring semester were learning about Zoom, and learning and quick and on the fly and trying synchronous, that we just thought, okay, online courses meant being synchronous online. Okay, we'll do our class on a screen. And so as we finished that semester and cobbled through that, everyone was just like kicking and screaming like, oh my gosh, that was terrible. I mean, I don't think many people had a positive experience in that. Students didn't. The world was a crazy place, so it's not positive. It wasn't positive in a lot of ways. What Wake did, and what other universities did across the globe in the United States as well, people took different tacks during that summer. How do we get faculty ready for the fall? And what ready meant for, I think, most of us when we were thinking about that, I'm including myself here at Wake, but I'm sure across the board, I mean, is thinking like, how do I get technology to work? Like, what technologies do I need? And so like it was like, okay, I just need to know how to use Zoom better. Or maybe I need to use Quizlet more, or maybe I need to learn this thing like VoiceThread, or maybe so my mind, and I think I got the general sense everyone's thinking we're going to get trained on how to work with these tools. And so Wake was fantastic for a couple of reasons. It was instantly clear to me that technology was a footnote in our curriculum. And initially I thought, what? It was the most transformative experience for me, in that we went back to basics and asked questions that I hadn't thought about since my early days of learning to teach at the university level, which, if I look back, weren't really that awesome anyway. They were enough, right? And we learned a lot on the ground, but then we also took a lot of things that people had done before and just sort of did them because people did them, right? But this was a great opportunity that I didn't see initially, but saw then as the most amazing opportunity to touch base with what teaching and learning is and why it matters, inclusiveness, thinking about design in a very, very detailed way. And what ends up becoming the case in that scenario, in that summer, was we end up finding out that what we needed more than anything was to understand what we wanted to do and why we wanted to do it, and being intentional about what we're doing. Once we have those things in place, the technology sorts itself out, because now you come to the technology with, I want this, I want that. What does that? Not, oh, what myriad of things can this do? And now how can I think about applying it? It was more like I came to the technology because I want something from it, not just exploring it and seeing how I can go back. I mean, it sounds ludicrous to even think that now, but that's the way a lot of us were thinking. I think some universities did get that, like, hey, we're going to give you the tools. These are all the things, and tool. Why I think that COVID moment and what we're doing now is similar is, and dissimilar in some, and in very important respects, is that I don't think we've recognized clearly that this is a COVID moment, in that sense that I don't think it's about tools. I don't think, and I think there's way too much attention, like the pre-summer mentality going into that COVID summer of 2020, that mentality of we're talking about how to use the tools. The focus on tools, to me, is very, very secondary. They're a moving target. They're constantly changing. The abilities and functions and all of those things will continue to change. Learning a tool today does not mean knowing about what it does in the future or why. To me, it seems as if we need to not pause on technology. This is not like a pause on technology, but pause on our thinking about the way we're approaching this situation, and think about, why are we doing what we do at higher education? It's a time to it's sort of a time to sort of to circle the wagons, right? And say, what do we do in higher education? What have we always assumed we were doing? And what potentially, and this is my view, what do students come to universities thinking they're doing? How do we connect those together and understand and understand what we want, how we want it to look, and then think, how do technologies help us do that? That's sort of like an institutional way of looking at AI. That's not, I'm going to take a picture in my home and make a recipe, right? Like that, it can do those things too. So looking at it as a uniform, it's all good, it's all bad, clearly never ever works in anything, but also understanding when we're talking about certain technologies, what we mean by the use of them. And in this context of education, I think it's not talked enough about how important it is to have a fundamental understanding of data and information literacy. People will call things like, I kind of have a little bit of a with AI fluency, because I see it coupled a lot with tool use. And I don't think that tool use is, maybe that's a proficiency with a tool, but I don't think it says anything about AI itself. It's not, and this is coming from somebody who's been working with machine learning and such, so you're probably people probably think, oh yeah, to him it's always easy when it's not really hard to get some of these main pieces of the puzzle together to understand some aspects of which can be very, very helpful and to help clarify what you should and shouldn't expect, the way we think about interacting with the tools, but more importantly, like why we would ever want to do this and that. That's really abstract. I think you're probably gonna pull me out on something more concrete, but like I think there's a lot of learning without tools. I think tools muddy the water is what I'm trying to say. I think there's an educational component here that needs.
Well, I really like that, and that's the next bullet on my list here is AI fluency. What exactly does it mean? And sending our students out into a world that they are going to have to use artificial intelligence in whatever form, do we have a responsibility to produce AI fluency graduates? And then that's on the student side. Should the university create AI fluent faculty and staff?
I think yes. I mean, the simple answer on all those accounts is yes.
But and as you were getting to, what does that mean?
Yeah,
It's not just how to use ChatGPT. And I hate you have a little issue with certain words. I hate prompt engineering. So it's not just prompt engineering and how to use ChatGPT.
No.
So what do you mean by AI fluency?
So one of the I think the first step, I mean, in an AI fluency is to stop talking about AI. Or if you do, you know that we're using it for a convenience, just as a handle. But if there's anything to the first step is to not refer to AI as often and as unqualified as we do in discourse in general. And within higher education, it's our obligation to do so. AI is many things. Your thermostat is some sort of artificial intelligence. We've been interacting with artificial intelligence for a very long time, and to understand what's different and how it is very important, right? Like, so to me, talking about AI, when I say that word, that might bring up chatbot look, right? They might think, oh, I go to a web page and there's a box and it says, what can I help you with? And that's AI. Or but AI can be other little things that aren't like that, right? That we interact with or can manipulate or automate or change, lots of different kinds of things. So to think about AI in just a blanket term is to me, one of the biggest, is at the moment one big challenge, is to just start recognizing that that's not one thing. It's many, many things, and we need to be more precise when it's necessary to talk about AI in productive ways, to talk about what we're talking about. So as you have mentioned before, like generative AI, right? So generative AI is different than other kinds of AI in specific ways, right?
I mean, as dumb as the Roomba is, that's an AI.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's just too many examples of AI and too common. We missed, and I don't think that's to. I don't want to give people. I think the impression is to be giving like the idea that like, oh, hey, there's lots of AI. I don't know that necessarily translates into making them educated, but it's a first step to start to be more intentional about what we're talking about. Because when we start talking about subcomponents of it, I think we can start thinking about it less monolithically and be a bit more we're on the same page when we're talking about applications, uses, abuses, et cetera, when we're actually talking about the technology that we're thinking about. To me, another aspect of which is important, which is connected to the way we think about AI again in the general sense, is that we're also, when we think about AI, we think about the frontier model companies like OpenAI or Anthropic or Google, et cetera, as if that is the source of this, right? To say and to encourage people to become AI fluent when AI to them is a chat bot highly associated with the almost Kleenex name of ChatGPT, right? It's just become synonymous, is almost to say we are encouraging you to adopt the vision of a company for a technology. And to me, that's also a huge disservice, because there are so many things that these technologies that are under the hood can be used, that we are, by not addressing, we are assuming we are just going to let the void be filled by these big corporate entities, which may or may not share our values, may share them now, may not share them in long term. I'm very much in favor of making it more accessible to more people to understand that they can be agents in this, and that they can use open, free.
Is this as simple as setting up some optional boot camps for faculty staff, potentially, maybe mandatory workshops for students? How do we get that message? How do we provide those resources? So all this stuff that you're mentioning, and the inner workings of AI and the ethics of it and the biases and what it really means, how do we get that out?
Yeah, so I don't have I'm not gonna have a silver bullet here that's gonna do it. I mean,
Don't
obviously,
worry, nobody has yet.
yeah, no. I mean, I definitely have ideas. I just think that these are ideas that, like, pie in the sky. I mean, if it were possible, I really would like to see something that happened during COVID. I mean, I really would love to see a summer program
Hmm.
that was incentivized and was organized in a similar kind of peer learning fashion. It would give us the traction to get out things broadly. It would also allow us to adapt to different departments the way it should be. And it's hard to have a one size fits all. I'm looking and thinking about faculty at this point, right? So that's kind of a thinking about it from a faculty point of view. But again, I think that these kinds of things would probably be best not about the tools. Like, I think it would be about other concerns, and just as fundamental as teaching and learning is to being an instructor in a classroom in this millennium, in this decade, as we move on, right? Those things change. The way we think about technologies has changed as well. We're less thinking about technologies as like, oh, you get Adobe and then you have to learn the tools, and like, oh, okay, cool. This doesn't work like that, right? This is much more under. It's fundamentally different, and it needs an educational basis, not like a PhD in anything, just some, a couple weeks of dedicated time structured by, and thought through about how to bring people into the understanding of this landscape that has existed. I think you have to start with thinking about the internet. I mean, I don't think we've done a job on the internet. I don't think people understand the internet. And I'm not trying to be like hyperbolic. Like, we understand the internet in certain ways, just like we understand ChatGPTs in certain ways. But like, there are certain things that people need to understand that we just have not covered in I think this new millennium, that will really shape the way people think, participate, where their voices contribute to better and more productive thought about these topics, right? So I don't think I have the vision for saying how to do or not do use AI exactly. I have my own thoughts, but like, I think regardless, informing people about stuff, that backfilling in the case of internet, and somewhat to some degree backfilling with AI now that we're definitely 4 years into this, is crucial for thinking about a solid foundation for which whatever new changes happen, they have a place to go in people's mind. Like, they understand, okay, this is an evolution on that, and that was already has these problems. I think people have, that's what I'm expecting.
What about the students? Should it be up to the individual faculty to work with the students, or do you think there's space in the curriculum for a seminar or a workshop, maybe something optional, or do you think it should be a fundamental requirement of each student to come learn about these foundations?
Deep thoughts. Yeah. I mean, you think it's moving mountains to get like a program like the COVID thing for faculty. Just think about what the curriculum would, I mean, that I can't, it's hard. I struggle a little, I struggle quite a bit actually with the idea that it's faculty's job to make the policies for AI in their classes, uh, I it just puts too much onus on the instructors. And I think in that process, again, I don't think most of us have enough understanding of how to frame that. Plus, we're doing stuff in our classes already. Like, I need to set
So
aside.
can you pull it out of the classroom,
Yeah.
each individual class, and make some kind of workshop or potential optional seminar? Is there space for
Yeah, I
something
don't
like
know. These are definitely big questions about the curriculum, and I definitely would not be the person to say how it should be done. But I really don't think it can be a tag on. I think we are in a. I don't think people can deny that this is a fundamental difference, and it's not going away, and it shapes. It shapes everything. I mean, it really. The people focus on their jobs, right? They're thinking, "Oh, what do I do? I need to be equipped because I do my job." But like, look. And I'm not a doomer, but it's also the case like, well, your job exists. But then the question is like, well, if your job exists or doesn't exist, like, well, what's your value as a human in this process, right? Like, so what is it about AI that makes it useful now and it wasn't useful 7 years ago, right? So what has been the leap in doing that, or what things that would make people understand more than ever that the careers they think they're training for as an undergraduate are always just a mirage, because whether they do or don't exist depends on factors that they don't control, and none of us do. You know what I mean? How many people, like, we go through an undergraduate education and we think, I'm going to become X. I mean, if you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, those things are going to exist. But many of the things that somehow we think we're shooting for, they become completely different things by the time we arrive into the market, right? Or they're saturated, or whatever the case is. We have to be creative. So I think a lot of the education that people get in an institution, in a higher education institution, isn't necessarily the training for a job, but rather the knowledge about how I deal with and work around creatively, inventing things that I'm interested in and passionate about, and how I apply that in my life, right? Like, outside of and moving on beyond, right? Those are, I think, the values of going to a higher educational institution, right? If you were just to get a job, go get job training. And I don't want to be, make anyone upset about that fact, but like, it's like there are vocational training programs, and maybe I think there should be more, right? Like, there's definitely a reason to get trained for something to fit into a role. But I think the higher educational systems, and definitely systems or institutions like Wake, we're looking at the whole person, right? We want to think about how you are a better person after your 4 years here than you were when you arrived to campus. Build on your strengths and make you someone who continues to build on your strengths, even outside of our classes, outside of our, outside of your 4 years, and equipping people for the knowledge in their head or the skills to do a particular kind of thing can be a really helpful exercise in getting good at something. But it shouldn't be the destination that's the something that I can do. I should be able to retool. I should be able to call back on deeper thoughts, questions, struggles, all of those things, so that I'm an adaptable person in the future. So will AI be used in their jobs? We're all thinking about that because that's the frame of mind we have right now. We think of jobs and we think of AI, and we don't. And I can't predict, but I know that just like the internet changed so much from when it first came out, like, we don't know what this looks like on the other end, right? I think there's a lot of panic that these jobs won't exist anymore, or that and the other, which I have maybe side hiatus on side hiatus. It's not AI taking your jobs. It's the employers, right? Like, they don't need to let you go, right? They can still use you or use you less and still pay you.
I think it's the dumbest thing when you downsize rather than making your employee now 300% more productive, and you can expand. That's so short-sighted.
So, and these are issues of society, right? I don't think we should be ignorant, or not ignorant. Again, I don't want to harp on ignorance, but I mean, I don't think we should just be complacent or make this false assumption that when technologies come in, it's the technology that's replacing you. It makes you angry at something that's not involved. It's the way that our system has been working, that it suggests that it's legitimate and justified to be able to make people redundant because there's a machine that can do it for you. We have to think about people's quality of life. There was always a promise, jumping way back, Industrial Revolution and even before, that these new tools would make us more in the human parts of ourselves. And it got co-opted into, no, we're going to, make you redundant. And now the larger, the corporate structures would then just reap the benefits from these things. And that's a system that I'm not gonna, we're not individually gonna take on, but I don't think it's helpful to think like that, right? We again, this is a point of agency. Like, hey, you should know it doesn't have to be this way, right? You don't have to assume that if that's happening, then you should be able to say that it doesn't have to happen this way. But for people to talk all the time, just as an example of how AI is taking jobs, is like, I have a lot. I guess I have a lot around this subject. It's not AI taking your jobs. There are people are taking your jobs, and this is something that we don't have to accept if we're informed. I think the topic for which we're all very interested in, AI, is important in so many parts of our society that it cannot be an add-on, and it can't be a tool training exercise. I really do think that look at me not trying to go too big. I really do think we're a pivotal moment in society. I mean, I just do think that the information society that we've lived on and living in has been able to function and continue to function without many people being aware about how it functions. That if it continues that way, I don't think we can see positive democracy. That's pretty out there, right? But I definitely think that it starts to undermine our ability to be actually participate in democratic societies. That's really deeply one of the things that scares me more than a lot of the AI is going to run rogue and kill us all. I think it's the way our systems are built and the way that they function within us as humans, and the way we tend to look at technologies that have more. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, that's like such a good point, because in general, like your comments about like how much the internet has changed. Like, I was having this thought the other day where I was like, I remember when people were afraid to use their real name or post a photo of themselves online, or people were worried about like, can I really shop, on my computer? Is that safe? And then now you see Amazon trucks everywhere. And then there's definitely going to be people who are uploading their W-2s to some AI tool and using that to do their taxes. And I think that's part of why I'm kind of so neutral on AI, is because like, I'm just kind of like, I don't know where this goes. So all I could do is try and pay attention.
Well, and then pay attention is again, look at me. I'm going to go, paying attention it's hard to pay attention. Like, look, paying attention it depends on what you're able to be exposed to, right? And being exposed to the information that might illuminate your understanding of what does how things are working or what have you, isn't necessarily as accessible as it may otherwise seem, right? Like, I don't know if you all watched the recent news, if people know what Palantir is, right? So Palantir, connecting with defense contractors, and help sort of spawn during the Gulf crisis, and trying to get more information connecting with. That was a big problem with the terrorist attacks in 9/11, was that departments didn't connect, like 21st century connections, right? They were working like governments, right? They hadn't gone to the Silicon Valley looking at things. We can connect all these things. So Palantir looked to fill that gap, and has been under the radar for a long time, but their reach into different things has grown in different ways. But their main goal is to be able to be able to identify and connect patterns and help, right? I mean, I don't think with the right mentality and the right thought process, I mean, I don't think that that's inherently a bad thing. It's just that when we have consolidation and then maybe less representation, then when technologies of this are used, they can be used very targeted to really really do some pretty serious damage to the way that we would like to think that societies function best. With that in mind, the news recently is that a company that I otherwise kind of respect, but I mean, just like all these major AI companies, there's always with a grain of salt, right? Anthropic is pairing with Palantir, and you just think, oh, okay, right? And I've been seeing some of the Claude desktop has now got like these, there's all sorts of little extensions, add-ons, developers, MCPs, all these little things that help you do things on your computer is all nice. One of them now is the health app on your computer. Like, hey, why don't you let me sync to your health app? And I'll tell you about how you can help yourself. Awesome. If as a person who was really super cool or super interested in quantified self and like measuring things and keeping graphs, I did that for a while. It sounds like a super awesome thing. But now it's like, ooh, that connected with my internet traffic, my this and my this and my that. And you start to, the tinfoil hat stuff isn't so tinfoily anymore. And so, how many people are paying attention? I understand that if you know anything about these AI models and stuff or these companies, they're all underwater. Right. None of this stuff is, I mean, if they're charging for like monthly $20 or, you go big time, 200 or 100 or whatever that is still, they're underwater, right? The compute that's necessary to run the large models, all of the stuff that's involved, the investments and all that stuff, those investors are going to want their money, right? And so you see, OpenAI moving into advertising. You see closer connections with government, and these are becoming. And OpenAI was OpenAI, like at the beginning. I knew about this group, and I knew some other groups, and it was very much in that earlier space I was telling you about. This experimentation and what can we do and make it helpful, and it's just really all very curious and inspired, and but it became helpful and useful and profitable. But once you start selling it, big time, then, people want to make their money. Not trying to criticize the fact that people need to make money, but people should be informed about when people go to change their models about how they're going to get paid. We're in a situation where typically would just like to keep our prices cheap, but to keep our prices cheap, they have to get something else somewhere. And a lot of that is information that, again, going back to the web, we're woefully undereducated about how much our information is worth, how much our breadcrumb trails across our lives matter to people.
So with that future mindset, let me ask you a closing question.
Yeah.
If you pay attention to the news cycle, higher education is under attack. The president of Dartmouth just released an essay the other day talking about all the positives for higher education and the negatives that society puts on it and how we can counter it. Mm-hmm. We know that there are issues with funding and return on investment. There are the political pressures. Let's leave those aside. Let's talk about what higher education looks like in the advent of AI and the way that knowledge transfer may be a thing of the past. Mm-hmm. Just the professor standing up there at the chalkboard saying, memorize this fact. There are more efficient ways to transfer that knowledge. What is the value of universities going forward, and how can they thrive?
As I look back to my undergraduate experience, when I was in that experience, I had one. I think I had what most students I think have, is the sense that this was a way to move myself forward in the job market in some fashion or form, right? Like that this will better my life economically, and I'll have stable financials and all that other thing. As I look back, and I think that the most important thing to me wasn't what necessarily I studied. It was the process, and I think this is and I could be wrong here, but I have an intuition that what a lot of people started to jump on when college educations became, instead of optional, became sort of like mandatory, right? Like for a very long time, going on to university was not an expected thing to do. Certain people did, and some people didn't, and there's lots of, again, we don't want to get into the economics of all this stuff, but there ended up, at some point somebody did some number crunching and said, hey, look, people who go to college end up making more money in their lifetime, and so you go, okay, it's college that does that. The question of what in college is doing that has probably been unaddressed, at least not made clear to the public about what that experience is doing, and in whether that's, I don't know how what I know or what I get from the wider public about why I go to college and what other people are getting from it, I can differ quite a bit. But I know that I understand that I got the impression, and I still see it, that going to college is an investment in a job, and that you expect return on investment, and that the value is sort of become sort of like a thought of a job training situation. And when universities were, say, more optional, I think you found people going on probably more for other reasons other than the job that was going to be on the other end.
Can you think of it as an internship for life?
Oh gosh, yeah. Getting away from the bigger pictures, like I said, like I look back and I go, what probably improved my life the most from going to college was all of the frustrations, all of the difficulties with administration, getting things done, learning how to make deadlines, keeping myself organized, being able to, work with others, a number of things that don't just happen in the wild.
So you don't come to college just for academics and just to learn a couple things that are in a professor's head. There are, now, granted, your mastery of skills, the academics are incredibly important, but are you saying there's more to your college experience?
Oh, most definitely. And I went to a big state school, right? So I was anonymous in my classes for the most part until major, and you get to be in smaller classes. But here at Wake, that's absolutely true. I mean, the fact that the typical student is going to be in a class with less than 20 students, right? Or something like that. At least my classes are always, we're capped around 20 or something like that. And the person in front of you is a not just a expert from like, I'm a master's, right? The PhD. Like usually you don't get access in your undergraduate to a PhD until it's like your last classes that you take. That our advising system had been, so personalized and so connected, and we could have conversations. You can have conversations with people that I would have never been able to just have a conversation with in my experiences in a state school. These conversations that I've had with students are so much more about life and my views and my experiences.
But artificial intelligence can't replace that.
Oh no! Yeah, no way. Like, our yeah, no. I mean, so if you think about like the way I think a lot of people think framing about things is putting process over product. If the product, and I'm not talking about widgets, but necessarily thinking about the end result is what we're achieving, then I think we're missing the most important components of any real experience, but like definitely university experience. Like it's the process. It's like going through it. It's a process of personal development, self-development, and that process is hard. It has to be hard. It can't be easy. You don't learn from coming in and leaving as the same person. And what changes you is difficulty, challenge, and I think AI can be part and still continue to prose and be formed to use in ways that challenge us. But I think when you ask about what the value of education and of going to college is, I completely side with people if the mentality is that they're looking for a job. Then I do not think that a university going into debt or spending, the amount of money that you can spend at a university is worth it. I don't, because it's not a good return on investment. I mean, I'm sure there's other aspects of which going to some colleges is helpful, networking and those are definitely valuable aspects too, to people that understand that networking is important. But if I, in my ideal world, thinking about my idealism comes to the fore, it's really the college experience isn't the knowledge itself. It's the learning to get curious, to see connections, to see how other people think, seeing those habits of mind, challenging yourself, learning to see your doubt, overcoming those doubts, being empathetic. I mean, all of the sorts of things that being in this sort of little petri dish can help you do, right? As you leave these walls, some of us go into, a bit more of a conservative mode, like I gotta get a job, and now I have to do what they say, or I have to think this way, and I think that's a reality that a lot of us experience, but yet it's a very important opportunity to be able to very much be a free thinker, to challenge yourself, do things you haven't done before. It's
a safe place to fail.
And life should be a safe place to fail.
Life isn't.
But it doesn't work out that way, right? But if we learn to love what we do and love to find fun or fun. When I say fun, I mean not like, yay, everything's joy, but like fun, like entertained by curiosity, even in things that you don't you're not inherently drawn to. Like you can that. Oof, I think that is like super valuable, and I don't know if that just comes naturally to people in the wild. Let's say, just like, oh, I don't need a college because I can learn that from a book. Yeah, you can learn knowledge of sorts, like techniques and things and stuff. But there's something about that, these kinds of experiments or these kinds of petri dishes that universities can set up that just I don't think are replaceable in that degree. So I think the university as a place for self-exploration, development, and so forth is not replaceable. It's generally not replaceable, but it is definitely something that I think we need to be very cognizant about as we continue to move through this age and forward, because some of the things that we've relied on as expected pressure points or conflict points or difficulty points are becoming less so. And it's important for us to remember that we should be continually pivoting ourselves to maintain those levels and areas of difficulty and change and conflict and all the things that need to happen to make oneself a better person, regardless of the future that comes on before. So in that sense, very relevant to AI in the sense that there's a lot of things that we do that we just don't, as faculty, we haven't questioned for a long time, or maybe as an institution, we haven't questioned because we haven't had to question it too much. One of those being the motivations of students, right? Like it's not on them necessarily, but it is a question. We can say, what do they expect from this experience? Have we thought consciously what we expect from that experience? And can we make those things happen with them? And, you know what I mean? Like I think when we assume, I feel like I have assumed so long that students are in the classroom for the reasons I think they're in the classrooms, and then they realize, I think AI has exposed some of those differences. Like, I'm in your classroom because I need this as a requirement. I don't care about this. I'm not saying that people are all like this, but if I have a choice, and I just want the product grade, I can do that now. And so it's exposed this level of things that I don't think are new, but they've been exposed. And so, yeah, again, COVID moment, like these are things like, hey, we need to address these things. They have gone too far for us they've gone far, and we've been able to sort of not address them, but now it's really not a question of, let's just act like it's not happening, and it's not just using tools because it's for your job. We should be addressing, again, deeper questions about what institutions like higher educations, what the purpose of them are. Not just to make us, be valuable, but from a point of view of a business standpoint, but just to because I think it's a really important institution in a society, in societies, to have these havens, these safe havens of places to experiment and to change and to innovate. And So there's a lot of things at play. I really do think that we're in a moment that doesn't just involve AI. It involves a lot of other things. It just happens to be one of the other components, which is really in the mix.
Well, an institution of higher education from a Petri dish to a safe haven. I think that's a great place to end.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
No, thank you. This has been fun.
Thanks again to our guest, and thanks for listening to the Deeks.ai podcast. Please continue to follow the AI discussion by subscribing on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you have any comments, questions, or would like to join the discussion, please email us at deeks.ai@wfu.edu.